So the theme for today's session, we're going to go into the software and I'm going to show you some stuff. I know that we've got people here from a whole spectrum, from people who are brand new, perhaps never seen the software before, through to people like Rennie, who's using it all the time and doing some great stuff and building beautiful proposals. So every time we have a theme, some sessions are more aimed at beginners, some sessions are more aimed at advanced. Today is kind of beginner to intermediate, because I'm going to do something I've not done before, which is building a model from the ground up. So I'm going to show you how to get started with your first model. So we're going to dive into the software very soon. Before I do that, what I want to do is give you some thoughts. So, and if you have no idea what the software is, by the way, and most of you do, most of you have been here many times before, the software is designed for you to sit in front of a client, and when they want to buy from you, you open up your laptop and you can ask them a series of questions to understand the scope of the work, what their preferences are, and then it reveals your prices. And either they buy or the price is too high. If the price is too high, you can change it. And we're going to show you all that. You'll see that as we build something up over the next 20 to 30 minutes. Before I dive into the software and build a model, we need to think about what is it that we're pricing. So what I'm going to do is, and most of you know that when you get the software, I've pre-built models for you. So for all the common services, things that we do in the accounting world, whether it's doing tax returns, bookkeeping, clean-up work, annual financial statements, there are models built into the software, and depending upon which plan you've got determines which of those models you already get. If you've got the Pro plan, you get all the models I've built. And so many people just simply take the models that I've built for you and then adapt them and use them. But today, we're going to look at how do you build one from the ground up? Particularly when, for example, there's something you want to price and there's not an existing model in there. How do you do that? So we're going to look at, today, we're going to look at training. I get a lot of questions from people saying, how do you price, Mark, how do you price training? So let's imagine that you have a client, and it could be a client, it could be a potential client, a business owner comes to you and they've just installed a cloud accounting system. Could be QBO, could be Xero, doesn't really matter what, but they've just got this system installed. They may have done it themselves, perhaps you did it. They've got a system and they want some training. They want you to offer a service to train them and their team in how to enter transactions into, I'll use QBO. I mean, if I say QBO, it could be Xero, whatever you prefer. How do you enter transactions into QBO? They might want to know, what can they do to save time? What could they do? How can they understand the numbers and reports and so on that are inside of there? They want some training. So the first thing we want to do is think about, what are we going to offer them? What will that package be? And as most of you know, one of the most powerful things we can do is to give people a choice of different packages. I call it menu pricing. And very often you may start with 3 options. So let's imagine that you're going to go with 3 options. You're going to give the client a choice of 3 packages. So, and let's imagine, for argument's sake, for now, let's call them our bronze, silver, gold packages. So the first thing, before you dive into the software, I recommend that you start to think about what those packages might consist of. So grab a pen and paper and start thinking about the various features that you might offer, list the various features, and you might decide, this one we're going to make available to the bronze, the silver, the gold. This thing here, we won't make in bronze, but we'll let them have this in silver and gold, and this one will be for gold only. So start off thinking about what you might build in your packages. You can then build this into the software, but it will really help if you do a little bit of advanced planning. So having then done that, and let me just get rid of that. Once you've planned what's in your packages, I would suggest the next thing you might want to think about is, what kind of prices are you hoping that you want to charge for this service? So start thinking about the prices, because this will help you to build your model. And the way I would think about it is, I want to think about, what's the price that the lease price, the minimum price, the entry level price, what would I like to get? And I might say, do you know what, if I'm going to do training, and this might be, let's imagine it's 3 hours of training on QBO, 3 hours of training, I might decide that I want to get at least, let's say, $300, £300, whatever your currency is. I might want to get at least 400 for the middle option and at least 800 for the next one. Then start thinking about, well, what do you ideally want to get? What's the kind of the typical price, the ideal price that you want? So you might think, okay, I'd love to get most of the time 500 for the entry level for the bronze. I'd love to get about 700 as a price if I do some middle level training, and perhaps 1200 would be the top. And then the other number to think about is something my friend Ron Baker calls the pump fist price. What's the price that if you got that, you would think, wow, that's awesome. So perhaps you want to get 900 for bronze, perhaps you want to get 1200 if it's silver, and perhaps 2000. So the reason you do this is because as you build your model, you're going to want to start putting some numbers in there as the price builds up. And then at the end of the process, you're going to want to test it a few times. And it'll be really useful if you have these numbers to hand just to give you an idea of where you're trying to build up to, the kind of range of prices that you want for a particular service. Okay, so let's imagine you've done that exercise, you've got that to hand. So let's now dive into the software and start to build this out. And I'm just going to, before I do that, I'm just going to log myself back in just to make sure I am logged in, which I am. And I'm just going to switch across now to the software. I will also just, if you just bear with me a second, I will just put myself back on the screen so you can see me. So I'm on the home page right now. And the home page is where you would be if you're about to price something, and you'll see on this screen and also on the left-hand side on the menu all the things you've currently set up to price. These are all the services that you're ready to price. So you might have your bookkeeping built up and your payroll and so on, but we're going to build a brand new one. So we go behind the scenes into the cogwheel, setting up the software in the cogwheel, and the place where you'll spend most of your time is model management. That's the third icon across. So I'm going to hit View, Edit Model Management. And this is where you manage your pricing models, all of your services. And you will find at the bottom a list of all the pre-built models, depending, of course, on your plan. So if you have the Pro plan, we've already written models for you for cleanup work, forecasting, bookkeeping, and so on. And you can hit the orange button to use the model. And you can see I've got a lot of models here because I'm always demonstrating that and I'm building up more. I should clean them out at some point. But over in the top right is an orange button that says Create New. So if you want to create something from scratch, from the ground up, that's what you would click. So let me walk you through the process. So number one, let's give our model a name. I'm going to call this QBO Training. For this particular model. You can specify whether it's recurring work or not. It's not in this case. You can select an icon if you want to. I'm going to have an acorn, I think. No idea why, but it's there to hand. And then you can choose whether it's draft or live. Now you can do this at the end of the process. You can just do it any time you want. I am going to click live now because I might forget later on. And the other quick thing that you might want to set up is there are two one-page reports. There's a full-blown proposal, but there's also a couple of one-page reports that you might want to produce before you get to the end of the pricing process. And you can set those up in your proposals and grab those. I'm not going to go into that in any detail right now because I've done a separate session recently and we'll go back to it at some point. But I want to choose, I think I've got one called Draft Packages. That'll do for now. Okay, so hit Save and Continue. And now what we get is our workflow. We've now started this up. Now we've got our workflow on the left-hand side for building up our pricing for QBO training. And we can see we've got our workflow is questions, expressing price, pricing parameters, packages, rewards, enhancements, and then review is where you'll then test your model before you go live with it. Now, normally I would say go through the pages, the workflow in order. I actually don't do that, to be honest. I tend to start with the packages. So I'm going to just show you the way that I would do it. I'd go to the fourth item down, the packages. And this is where you would build up what's in your bronze, silver, gold. The software defaults to entry, full, premium. You can change this. And so I'm going to build up my packages because this is what you can then show the client on screen when you get to the point of revealing the price and your different options. And I would recommend, by the way, that when you build out and plan out what's going to be in your packages, and by the way, I have created something here to save me a bit of time, I would suggest that you might make this table a nice little brochure that you run through with the client before you go into the pricing with the software. Okay, so let's go in. What I'm going to do is on this table, I'm going to hit add a component. And this is where you build in the first part of your package. So in my particular case, I'm going to do the essential things you need to know live training. I have in mind that I'm going to do 3 hours of live training, perhaps 2 live sessions, 2 90-minute sessions, or 3 60-minute sessions on the essential things they need to know about QBO. And I'm not using the light and the super, I'm using the entry, full and premium packages, the middle 3, and it's going to be included in all 3. So I just hit the save button. And what we'll see is you will see ticks across all 3 columns. So whichever they buy, cheapest, middle or most expensive package, they will get that live training as part of their service. So let me now add a second component. And just to save some time, I'm going to just do a copy and paste exercise. Control C, and I'm going to put in here how to save time with tips, tricks, and automations. And I'm going to exclude this from the entry. So this is if they go for the middle and the premium, they're going to get another 3 hours worth of training on things to save them time. So I've had in mind as I've built these, the entry level is the essential training, full includes the essential training, but I'm going to go further with the client and teach them things like bank feeds and other automations to save them time. Okay, let's add a third thing in. I've got 5 in total, and there's a reason why I've got 5 as part of demonstrating a couple of other things. Let's imagine that the next thing that I will offer them as part of training is understanding your numbers so you can control the future, where I could look at things like the reports and things that come out of QBO. And that's going to be excluded from the full and the entry package. So we can see now that's only in the premium. 2 more things I want to build into this package. Let me just do again a quick cut and paste to save time. I'm going to just show on this table, it's not something they get, but I want to show them how many hours of training they get in each package. And one of the things that you can do as well as ticks and crosses is you can choose text. So I'm going to say on the entry they get 3 hours of training. On the full, they get 6 hours of live training. And on the premium, they're going to get 9 hours of training. Hit the save button. You can see that now on the bottom row. You can see I've built into what I'm going to show them the hours of training, the live training they'll get. Final thing I want to show you with my packages is I'm going to video record all of the live sessions to add value, to give them a permanent record of the live training, which they will get for free. So as an extra bonus. So I'm going to put that in as the feature. And I could put a tick, which is the default. I'm going to change it to this middle option called free, because rather than a tick, what it will do is it will put the words free, if you can see at the bottom. So I'm happy now. I've now built my packages. I know what I'm selling. I can, so I'm going to hit the save and continue just to make sure it's saved. And then I'm going to move back to the start now and do it properly in the right order. Okay, so we've built packages. Let me just double check that I've done that right and have saved it. Yes, so they're there. Okay, so now what you want to do, and this is the heart of your pricing models. This is where you start to think about how will I build the price up? And it's going to be based upon asking the client questions. And 2 types of questions. Number 1, you want to ask questions to identify the scope of the work. So for example, if it was bookkeeping, your first question might be, how many transactions do you have a month? If it was payroll, how many employees, how many payroll do we have to run? So we want to ask scope questions, and we want to ask preference questions as well. Give people choice. And if you're new, yes, we're already giving them choice. We're giving them 3 packages, but we can go beyond that and you'll see the power of this in a short while, the power of preference questions. So think about what might impact on scope. And what I would recommend is think about what is the thing that might have the biggest impact on the price, because this starts the price calculations. Now, in this particular case, I've done something a little bit different because I'm going for my first question as how many people will participate in the training. Am I training just the business owner, or is it the business owner and his spouse, or is it a larger company with lots of team members that are going to be using QBO and I'm going to be training lots of people? So I'm going to use that as my first question because that's going to start the price going. So I'm going to add a section of questions and I'm going to just call this about the training. And in that section, I'm going to ask a question, and the question is, how many people will participate in the training? Okay, and by the way, there is a question coming. I will answer that because it may be a question going through other people's mind, and that is from Tina. And I've just realised I've forgotten to switch my screen across. Tina says, can I watch the video later? Yes, you can. It's being live streamed to both my Facebook page and to YouTube for the exact reason that will enable you to catch up on it later. So I've got this first question. How many people will participate in the training? And I confirmed the description. I'm not going to bother with that for now. That's for another day. But the essential bits are, I can then choose what sort of question is it. And we could either have a drop-down box of different options. We could have a yes or no, but it's not really applicable in this case, or a value, a number. Now, there are 2 ways that you could do this when you build your model. The obvious one might be, well, it's asking for a number. How many people will participate in the training? And so we could make it a value where we enter 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, whatever it might well be. And then we might decide that, and we always start off with an add question, an add calculation first, and the amount. If I put in, let's say 200, for argument, in fact, I'll put 300, because that was a number I put in earlier as in my thinking as what my minimum might well be. Let's go with 300. Now that would mean that if the client wants 1 person being trained, the starting point in the calculations is 300 for the training, $300, pounds, whatever currency you're in. If they want 2 people, it'll be 600. If it's 3, it'll be 900. So what the software does is it takes that number, that value of 300 I've put in, and multiplies that by the number of people being trained. Now, you might decide you don't want to do it in that kind of linear straight line because from a scope point of view, particularly if you're training via, like I'm doing now, with the Zoom call or whatever, it doesn't make any difference to you whether you're training 1 person or 20 people. It's the same amount of time from your point of view. And so you might not want it to go up linearly. You might decide you want it to go up, not because the scope changes, because it doesn't. There's no extra work whether you train 20 people or 1 person if it's online training, other than the fact that you might have to deal with some extra questions and so on from people. But what you might want to do is increase the price to reflect the fact that somebody wants 10 people being trained is going to get more value than a smaller business who just needs the 1 person being trained. It's just that it might not be 10 times the price. So how do we get round that if we don't want to have a linear 300 per person? And there are a couple of options here. One is, let me just get rid of that entirely. We could switch to a drop-down box question. And now what we can do is give a range of options. So what we might say, and I'm just going to give this is a name for your box. I'm going to call this this is a name for your drop-down box. It's internal this bit, but I'm going to now add some options. So I'm going to say if you want 1 person being trained, it's 200. Add an option. If you want 2 to 5 people to be trained, then I might pick something like, I'm going to go with 500 for argument's sake. And if they want 6 plus, then it's going to cost them $7.50. So we can create our prices based on the number of people want to be trained, either in a linear way, it's an amount per person, or we could just create some different ranges and have something a little bit simpler. Okay, and I would just hit the save button if I want that, and will just get a reminder. This is what will basically pop up for the client, the options: 1, 2 to 5 people, or 6+. Okay, I'm going to go with that at the moment. I'm going to go with that at the moment, but there is another way. If you want to go back to the linear one, what if, I'm going to hit the save button for a second, what if you wanted to do it so that it had a price for training the first person at, let's say, 300, but you only want to add on an extra 100 for person number 2, 100 for person 3, 100 for person 4. The way that you would do that is you go back to the first type of question where you say, I want it to be 100 per person, but then under expressing price, we can add what's called a base price of 200. Now, normally this is 0. Normally you won't change this. Okay, this is an advanced feature. But what this does, it says, okay, I'm going to make it 200 and then add on 100 per person being trained. So one person, it's 300, therefore. 2 people, it's 400. So it's linear, but it's building in, if you like, a setup cost. Okay, I'm going to put that back to 0 for now. Hopefully that's made some sense. But I would suggest, if you don't want it linear, having a drop-down box gives you a bit more control. Right, I'm going to ask a handful more questions. Let me just go back to my Word document, because I also might want to know, from the point of view of a scope issue, is actually where do they want to be, and also a preference as well, where do they want the training to take place? Do they want us to travel to their offices and do the training? Are we happy to do it in our offices? Or perhaps you want to do it online, for example, using Zoom. Obviously, in a pandemic, perhaps there's no choice. It has to be online, but it may well be that we can give the client some choices. So if I was going to do that, I would definitely use a drop-down box. And I'll come back to this in a short. I'm going to hit multiply, and I'll explain why in a second. Just hold on for a second. I will explain that. I could choose an existing drop-down box. I don't have one. I'm going to create one that I'm going to call location. So location, I'm going to add some options, and I'm just going to give them 2 choices just for simplicity now. So we could do your premises, could be option 1, and I'm going to put in 1 here. I'm going to put in 1.2, and I'm going to put in online, virtual. And I'm going to put a 1 in there, and I'm going to hit save. So what this is now doing is, the first question calculates the price based on the number of people being trained. The more people being trained, the higher the price is. Now the second question is saying, where do you want the training to take place? Do you want it to be us to travel to you, or do you want to happily do it online? If they want us to travel, it's going to multiply, because I've set multiply this time, it's going to multiply by 1.2. It's going to add on 20% to the price if they want us to travel. Otherwise, it doesn't make a difference to the price. And I might set a default option as online. Okay, let me hit save. I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and just to illustrate a couple more things. Because the other thing that you want to do is also give people choices. What other options could you give them? So if I was doing training, I might offer to do a workbook for them. They might want a workbook. So that's a yes-no question. Do you want us to create workbooks for the training? Yes or no. And if they do want workbooks creating, I could either multiply the price upwards, or I could add something. I'm going to go with a simple add for now. If they want me to write workbooks to go with the training, I'm going to charge an extra $500 for doing the workbooks. And if they don't want them, the price doesn't change. It's going to add 0 on. Okay, hit the save button. I'm going to do 1 more question, and I'm going to ask them, where's the add question? I'm going to ask them, would they like, and this is again a yes-no question, do they want a post-training Q&A session? So once the training is completed, do they want me to have another session where I answer their questions, because it may be a month later that some questions have arisen in the meantime, and I'm going to do that as multiply, I think. And I'm going to say if they want me to do that, it's going to be an extra 30% on the price. If they don't, I multiply by 1. It doesn't make a difference. Okay, hit the save button. And I think that's sufficient. As you'll see later, we don't need to make our models too complicated. For something like training, 4 questions is going to give you some really good options to work with the client and find the package that's just right for them. So that's questions. Let's move on to expressing the price. And there's nothing really I desperately want to change here. I'm going to leave this. It's less important, this. What is important, though, is the third area, which is called pricing parameters. This is where you set the price for your bronze, silver, and gold. So those questions do a calculation and work out a price. And that price is what's normally the bronze or the entry level. And by the way, we can change the name of the packages if we want to. So I might want to call them basic training rather than entry. So I'm going to call this basic, which I can't spell. Basic, we'll go with perhaps core training for the middle one, core, and then perhaps advanced training. So you can change the names of your packages here. And then the other things we'll want to change is here you might want to set a minimum price. I never want it to be less than 300 for the basic. I never want to be less than 400 for the middle, and never less than 700. If you remember earlier, if I can find it again, oops, I've lost it now because my iPad's turned off. But I showed you those numbers on the screen earlier. You might want to go back to those. What's the minimum prices that you'd want to charge? Okay, that's that. And then there's a maximum for each package. I would leave that as a high number because why put a limit on how much money you can earn? Now the next one is called relative price multiplier. What happens is you have in basic a 1. That means that whatever numbers calculated, whatever price is calculated by those questions, that becomes your basic price, basic package, bronze package, if you leave a 1 in there. For the core, we might want that to be 30% higher in price. Probably more than that. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Perhaps 50% higher. I'm going to go with 1.5. So what that'll do is multiply the price by a further 1.5 for the middle package. And actually, I'm going to go with 1.4. And then I'm going to create an anchor with the top one and go with, I think I'm going to go with double. It's going to be double the price of the basic. Now, there's other things we can do with relative price, add, and so on. I don't want to go through that. That's more advanced training. I'm giving you some of the basics with getting started. The other thing that you might want to do is say to the client, rather than paying an upfront payment, they can spread it over, let's say, 2 installments. They pay half up front, they pay half at the end of the training. And those of you that follow me in the Value Pricing Academy will know there's some psychology behind that. Okay, there's nothing else that needs to be changed on that screen. I'm going to hit save and continue. Now we get to the packages. We've built that. Save and continue. Now we can offer behavior rewards. This is where, and this isn't available, by the way, in the starter plan, but if you have the full and the pro plan, you can use behavior rewards. It's a form of discount. Let me just show you very quickly what you might set up. So you might decide that you give them a discount if, let me just put, I'm going to call this discounts for now, and I'm just going to add a reward, and it's going to call it pay in full in advance. And I'm also going to put on the screen a description which will say, when you pay in advance, we'll reduce the price by 10%. So I'm going to go with 10 in there for a percentage deduction. And you can create all sorts of behavior rewards. The limit is your creativity. And the last thing I might want to set up is the upsell. What if they say yes and they buy? If they want to buy, then you definitely want to add them other stuff. So I'm going to call this things to enhance your training. And what I'm now going to do, let's just save that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just do a quick grab of this, because what I might want to do in my, once they say yes, I might want to offer them a complete guide to building customized reports. Perhaps I've done some video training on how to use QBO to build your own customized reports. And perhaps I want to say to them, normally this is $197, but if you say yes now, you can have it for just $100. So I'm going to do, that's a yes, no. Do you want it, yes or no? And if so, it's going to add on 100. Okay, click save. Now, final thing, we're almost there. Final thing is, what we now see on the review stage is we see those 4 questions that I've put in there. And what I can now do is do a test quote without having to go through the full software in front of a client. So my first one, how many people will participate? You can see I created my different options in the drop down. Let's say the client wants, let's say 3 people being trained. So we've got 2 to 5, and they wanted to be online. That will leave it there. And we know probably most clients don't want the workbooks, so we'll leave it that. I hit the calculate button, and what it does is it shows you how the price is building up. So for 2 to 5 people, you may remember I said it would be 500. If it's online, it doesn't change the price. If it was your premises, it would increase by 20%. Let's just check that. That would go from 500 to 600. I've clicked no for the next one, so no change there. And then it's added on, I think it was 20%, I forget now. It's added on for saying yes to post-training Q&A. So that's calculated as 780. And then what the software does is it works out what that would be for each of the 3 packages. And given that we're going to express over 2 payments, that would mean for basic, 2 payments of $390, which is $780. And then it goes up to 2 payments of $546 for the core and 2 payments of $780 for advanced. So if you're happy with that, we hit save and continue. That's it, we've done. We've built the model. So now we have a client come in. The client wants to buy our training on QBO setup. We perhaps go through a brochure, we build up the value, and now we get to the point in time where they want to know the price. So I'm going to, here we go, it's on the left-hand menu because I made it live, so you can see on the left at the bottom left, I've got QBO training. So I now open up my software in front of the client like this on my iPad, my laptop, whatever. Imagine the client's called Peter Rabbit, and it's a prospect. We've never worked with him before. And what we now do is we just work through the workflow. We ask the questions. So I might say to Peter, how many people want to be trained? I want 3 people trained. Okay, we can do that. Where would you like us to train you, do the training, Peter? Would you like us to come to your premises, or are you happy to jump online? Or if you can come to our premises, that would be really cool, actually. Okay, we can do that, Peter. Now, would you like us to do workbooks for you? That means we'll go and create some customized workbooks that you can then have as part of the training, so you can fill in the blanks, you can keep your notes. That sounds awesome. Yes, please, I will have that. Okay, another thing that we recommend, Peter, is that once we've completed the training, there is the option for us to then, after about a month, 2 to 4 weeks, we get together again and have a Q&A session, because you may find there's some questions have arisen since the training. Yes, that sounds cool. I'll have that, please. So I only had 4 questions, but that's great. Now we come to the page and we can remind Peter what our different packages are. We built those up earlier. And so we say to Peter, which of those do you think is the most appropriate for your business? Peter might say, I want the middle one. The middle one looks great, the core one. Okay, great. So now we know what the client wants. We just hit the fixed price button, does all the calculations, and now Peter can see that for the core, if I just hit the select, it's 2 payments of 1,001. And Peter will either say yes or no. That's all that can happen. It's really simple, yes or no. If he says yes, you're happy because you've made $2,000, which is, if you remember the numbers I showed you earlier, that would be kind of your pump fist. Yeah, I'd be really happy with $2,000. But if Peter says that's too expensive, the great thing about the software is we work with the client to change things. And what we might do is we might say, hit the back button and say, well, Peter, the reason it's that price, it's 1,001, 2 payments of 1,001, is partly because one of the things you said is that you like us to travel to your premises. Now, what a lot of our clients like is they're happy just to do the training on Zoom because nobody has to travel, and when we do that, it will cost you a bit less. Would you like to see what the price would be if we do it on Zoom? Oh yes, please, show me that. The client will say yes, they're intrigued, they want to know. And now they want to buy, they just can't afford 1,001. Well, now it's 910. 910 feels a lot less than 1,001. The client might well say yes. But if they don't, we might say, well, the reason it's 910 is because you want these workbooks creating. Now, actually, if I'm honest, you don't need the workbooks, and I'll tell you why. We're going to video record the live session, so you've got a permanent record of all of the training, and it takes us a lot of time to create those workbooks. Should we take those out? Okay, yes, let's not do the workbooks. Let me show what the price would be if we take those out. It's just 2 payments of 455. Oh, wow. Oh, I'll go with that then, please. So can you see, by having some preference questions, and you only need 4 questions to build a great model for something like training, because as you change things, you'll get to a point where you get to a price that the client can afford. And the idea is you want to go with the high price first because 2 payments of 1,001 creates what's called an anchor, and then we just change the package with the client. Now let's say it was still too expensive. We could give the client a 10% discount because we've set up a behavior reward. So the client might say, is there anything you could do to reduce the price? And that's what this BR is up. It's a kind of a discounts button. We just don't go public with it. If I hit the BR, I could say, one of the things you could do, Peter, is you could pay in advance. And when you do that, and you'll see a little the description pops up, when you pay in advance, we can reduce the price by 10%. Would you be willing to do that? Because that then reduces it to just 2 payments of 409. Ah, yes, please, I'll have that as well. I'm going to turn it back off for a second, but that's what you could give discounts if you want to. Now, if the client says yes to the 2 payments of 455, you've made the sale, great. What you now do is the upsell. And so you might say, Peter, just one more thing before we finish is a lot of our clients want the advanced training, a complete guide we've created on how to build customized reports in your QBO system. We normally sell that for $197, but if you want that now, it's only $100, and that would only take the price up to $505. Do you want that, yes or no? And the reason why enhancements, upsells are so important is because once the client said yes, they're in buying mode. The worst that can happen is they say no, and you've still made a sale at 2 payments of 455. But if the client says yes, you might take your 455 up to 2 payments of 505. If you don't offer other things, they can't pay you more money. Okay, that's a slightly longer session than I normally do, but I hope that's been useful for me to walk you through how you build a model from the ground up. So I'm going to answer any questions. Before I answer questions, because I've just seen David Colts is here from Houston. Hi there, good to see you, because that just prompted me, because we are about to start work on Monday with some enhancements, improvements to the software. And I just thought I'd run through. I know some of you have been saying, what's coming next with the software? What's coming? So let me just tell you what some of the features are, because one of David's requests is in there. So a request from my friend Jan Bodar was about making sure that and these, by the way, the next developments are all about the proposals, which we've not covered today. That's what you do next. Once the client says yes, you can produce a beautiful proposal. And that's going to be the theme of next week, by the way, proposals. So Jan asked if we can make sure that the proposals can be done in US letter size. Yes, the developers are doing that. Another thing that we're doing is allowing you to change the font color of the headers and the footers. They had to be black before. You can build hyperlink. You'll be able to build hyperlinks in soon. We're working on different date formats. So when you insert a date as a keyword into a report, you can change the format. If you don't want the date to be in the format of 2/4/21, but you'd like it to be in full, for example, like 4th of April 2021, or perhaps you prefer April 4, there's all these different formats. You can choose the formats of the dates in your proposal. We're also adding, it was a request from Zeb Smith, I don't know if Zeb's here or not, but in the footers to the proposal, you had two elements where you could put, for example, the page, proposal name. There will be a third element, so you could put something else in the footer of your proposal pages. David, we are doing additional keywords because that was a great idea. That's being built in where you can do keywords at the user level and at the proposal level. David knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's a great idea. It'll allow you to create your own keywords and do some really interesting things with creating proposals and engagement letters. More on that later. And then the really big thing that we're changing, which a lot of people have requested in the proposals, is the ability to change the page sizes, orientations, margins. So if you want to put an image in your proposal and you want it to go right to the edge of the screen because you'll print it as a PDF, then you'll be able to do that. And that's a big development. It's going to give you so much flexibility for creating really nice proposals. Okay, we have 17 minutes. So let me see where we are with questions. I don't think we've got too many questions at the moment, but so ask if there's a question. So I think I covered yours earlier, Tina, but for anybody who came in late, can I watch this video later? Absolutely. It'll stay on my YouTube channel and also my Facebook page. So if you want to revisit it, because sometimes when I go through the software, you want to go back and just watch it slowly because I go through fast. Everyone's at different levels. If you're a beginner, you may want to catch up with that. Let's see. We've got Marlon's here. Hi, Marlon. Phil, you said, here's a question from Phil. What was it? Is there a link to the steps document Mark keeps referring to and copying from? Do you mean this document here? Just say yes if that's the. Oops, I've just messed it up. If that's this document, if that's what you mean, which I think it is, Phil, the answer is no. But happy to share it. I did that earlier just as part of my preparation so I could copy and paste rather than you watching me type away slowly the questions. I'm more than happy to share that with you. I just need to figure out where to put it. Perhaps Phil, yes, so Phil says yes. What I can do with that document is we'll probably put it as a link to it in the description for I don't know whether you're in the Facebook page or whether you're in YouTube right now, but in the description, I'll ask Sarah if she can add a link to that. Okay, what else has come in? There's not too many questions, so I'll read a few more people out, give a few more shout outs. We have Jim here from Radlett. Is that Radlett in the UK? I know we have a Radlett in the UK. We have, okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure what your full cycle virtual assistant. Thanks so much. This is an awesome system. Thank you for the feedback. Kate Merrill, is that a question? I think it is. If they opt to pay in advance, why does it show two payments? Okay, Kate, the reason for that, it's to do with price psychology as much as other things, because it ended up with 455. Two payments of 455 feels like a smaller price than if you went with 910. Is that maths right? So you could say it's $910, or you could say it's two payments of 455. That's really powerful, the psychology behind that. So that's why you may want to break it down. And that's why I recommend that if you are pricing annually recurring things, whether it's bookkeeping, annual financial statements, whether it's tax returns, payroll, you show it as not a total figure. You don't say it's 6,000 for your annual financial statements. You show it's 500 a month. It feels so much less. But with the software, you can choose how many months you spread it over. So you can have, I did 2 months, you could have 12 months. If you want to do payroll and you want to show it as it's a weekly payroll and you want to show the price as the weekly amount, where I put those twos in the box, you could put 52 and it then works out the price for the total, divides by 52 and gives you a weekly price. That's the reason, Kate. I hope that makes sense. We've only got, keep the questions coming, by the way, because we haven't got too many questions and we have 13 minutes left. I've never run out of questions before. Robin from Moscow says, did you calculate your prices as cost plus? Where was measuring value to the client? That's a really smart question. Let me see how I best answer that. So you might, because you want to make sure that you factor in the scope of the work, you want to make sure you're thinking about, remember I showed those numbers earlier? I don't know, let's see if I can dig them back out. I showed you and got you to think about the sort of numbers you might want to charge, and you might want to say to yourself, well, I charge out at $100 an hour, and if I'm doing the bronze training, that's going to be 3 hours worth of training, so I want a minimum of 300. That's kind of the thinking behind this row here, that you might want to think about. You want to just make sure you cover your costs. So that might be in your thinking, that you want to make sure that's the case. But so where does value pricing come in here? That's because really what we're doing is, with a lot of those questions, like for example, do you remember I said, do you want a workbook? Well, the workbook could be the same workbook for every client you do QBO training. And so that workbook, once you've created it, there's pretty much zero cost to give them a workbook. And so we're not thinking about the cost, we're thinking about what's the value of that workbook? What do I think that workbook's worth? It may be, do you remember the upsell was that some training you've done, perhaps video training on, I forget what I called it now, the complete guide to building customized reports. That could be a workbook, that could have been, it could be a video training video you did. And I said, normally available for $197, you can have it for $100. You've already created it once, so there's no, it's not cost plus. We're thinking about, well, what's this worth to somebody? And what we're doing is start with a lot of these options. Like, for example, you can either have this training done online or we can travel to you. And we're not going to work out, well, how many hours is it going to cost to travel and what's that mileage cost and all that. We get it with just thinking about what's the extra value that we think that it's worth to travel to their premises. And really a lot of the numbers that you're putting into the system is judgment. The analogy I often give is, if you think about, and this is where preference questions are really powerful, things like where would you like it to take place? It's a bit like when you book a flight with one of these budget airlines, and probably most airlines now. You go onto the website, their pricing system, and they'll ask you some preference questions. So, for example, in Europe, it might be Ryanair or EasyJet, and one of the questions they ask is, do you want speedy boarding? Do you want to pay, it's just £25, do you want speedy boarding to be in the queue to be one of the first on the plane? That's not cost plus pricing, because it costs Ryanair, it costs EasyJet zero, whether you're the first on the plane or the last. There's no cost involved. They've just been thinking about, okay, so what do I think people will value, and what will they be prepared to pay to be the first on the plane, to have speedy boarding? And that's why preference questions become really powerful, because once we've got some sort of minimum price sorted, then we're just being creative, thinking about the value, and then the client gets to choose. Only the client can determine what the value is. And that's why, for example, we offer them 3 choices: the bronze, the silver, the gold. Some clients will see the value in the extra training. And what you want to do is make sure that the price of the more expensive packages is not higher because of the costs, but higher because of what you see as being the value. And ideally, when you set it up right, is that you make more profit on the premium one rather than the cheapest one. Hope that all helps. That was a great question, Robin. Thank you for that. Right, what Valentina said, yes, please, Mark. I have no idea. I'm going to guess that, Valentina, I'm guessing that was, when did you ask that question? That was probably to, I want that Word document. Well, yes, we will do that. Jim says, yes, near Watford. Of course, Radlett's near Watford. The reason I know that is I grew up in, as now Ali knows, in Bedford. So I used to sometimes jump on the train from Bedford to London, and I think Radlett's one of the stations it goes through, if I'm right. Hope you hope to move to Portugal soon, Jim. Oh, well, it's amazing. Come and visit us. I don't know where you're thinking of coming. We're 30 minutes outside of Lisbon. We've been here for not far off a year now. Sarah and I arrived here just at the end of May, and we're absolutely loving it. I would not want to go back to the UK. Okay, I would not. It's really good here. So, Jim, let me know if you want any advice, Jim. Just reach out. Any advice on Portugal? Right, Phil, question coming in. I think Phil says, can you use some sort of user unlock code so that your workbook cannot be shared with other businesses unless they pay you? Okay, so that's not a pricing question or effective pricing question. I don't know is the answer to that one. To be honest, it's not something I'd worry about, Phil. And the reason for that is that increasingly the world's going digital, whether it's digital products, you might have ebooks, you might create videos. There'll always be some people who cheat and share things and share links, but I wouldn't worry about that too much, because if you've got a paying customer buying something from you, and then one of their mates wants a copy of it and they want and they share it, that mate is probably not going to actually pay you because they're not the right sort of person. So it's not cost you anything if they're never going to be a customer of yours. It's not cost you anything if they cheat the system. So sometimes we get hung up on things, and I kind of have this abundance mentality that I just want to help as many people as I possibly can. As you know, I run a lot of free training. I have many people that just come for the free training. That's fine. And if you're here for the free training, if you become a customer at some point of the Value Pricing Academy, that'll be awesome. If you're just happy with the free stuff, that's also awesome. If I can help you, then I'm happy to help. Okay, what else have we got? Suzanne says something really smart here. Everyone's value is different. Absolutely, Suzanne. Everybody values things differently. That's why we give people different choices, because we don't know what someone's willing to pay. So the more that we give them different packages, and build preference questions in, different people will, some people will choose they'll still be happy for you to pay you more money for you to do the training at their premises. Because like speedy boarding, some people will choose to pay you that more money because they see the value. Others won't. So with value pricing and the principles of the software, the reason why preference questions are so important, like where do you want it to take place? Like, do you want a post-training Q&A session? These are preference questions. They're really powerful because they help you to start the customer volunteers. They tell you what they value by saying yes to those questions. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, and I have a feeling there's no questions at the moment, so I'm going to hang on for a second for a question to come through. Angela says, what does Angela say? Excellent explanation. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. Jim says near Luso. I don't know where Luso is. I'm going to look that up now and find out. That's where you're going to move to in Portugal. Okay. Oh, we've got stuff coming in now. Lorraine says, I love the versatility of the software. I'm able to tailor every quote, which is one of my key selling points. Yeah, one of the things, just to pick up on that point that Lorraine said, which I don't know if you're aware of this, I know I had the conversation with Jan Bodar just a little while ago, is once you've built your model, your template, you can tweak it for different clients. So one of the things, I'll give you this as a tip, because this is something that you might not know. I just need to go back to the software, and I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to click on the cogwheel, model management. I'm going to find that QBO setup one that I did. I'm going to hit the edit button. One of the things that you can do, if we go into the expressing the price, I don't know if you saw this, there's a button called Global Adjuster, and it defaults to 1. It's a final tweak, if you like. So let's imagine you've got a pricing model. You're off to go and see a particular client, and you know that client actually is willing to pay you more money. And if they're willing to pay you more money, then that's great. So what you might think, that client's going to pay 10% more than that. If you just simply put in 1.1, hit save, then go and see the client and go through the process, all the prices will be 10% more. If when you get back, you want to revert back to it was, change the 1.1 back to just 1. So Global Adjuster is a way where you can very quickly, without having to go into all of the questions, you can very quickly change the prices on a client-by-client basis, or it might be a way every 12 months for increasing your prices because of inflation and so on. Okay, what else have we got? Valentino, I think, has a question, and we've got 3 minutes left, so probably time for 2 more questions. Valentina says, can some of the packages, tasks lines can be changed with other tasks to suit the client's needs? No, it's a question I often get. The packages, those ticks and crosses, they are fixed packages. The idea being is that you don't want people to pick and choose bits from there. The analogy I usually give is it's a bit like the McDonald's Happy Meal. The Happy Meal at McDonald's is a package. You don't go into McDonald's and say, I want the Happy Meal and I want the toy, but I don't want the fries. Can you give me a better price if we take the fries out of the package? It's a standard package. Standard packages allow you to systemize processes. Now, having said that, there is a way to get around that by using a combination of behavior rewards and enhancements. So it could be, for example, if you find that you often get clients that want, they want, let me think, they want the premium package, for example, but they don't want something that's in it, which actually you think is time consuming. Then what you could do is have a behavior reward and say, if you have the premium package, but you don't want this feature, then we'll reduce the price by 10% or by $100 or whatever. And so you can use behavior rewards, if you wanted to take things out of a package. And vice versa, what you could do, and I didn't show it, but in the enhancements, you might have a situation where clients often want one thing in the premium, but it's usually too expensive for the whole premium package. And so you can have an enhancement that if they choose the cheapest one, it says a section of enhancements or upsells, popular things people like out of our premium package. And you could then say, would you like our advanced reports? And you could sell that separately without them having to buy the premium package. So yes, you can do that with some creativity, but generally speaking, packages are fixed like the McDonald's Happy Meal so that you can systemize your processes. Okay, Nancy says, I think the pricing software is brilliant, thank you. Still trying to figure out how to best work it with the service I offer. I just need the time to tinker more in it. Yeah, Nancy, the one point I would make is that I'm an accountant, you're all accountants and bookkeepers. One of our problems is we tend to overanalyze things. We want our model to be just perfect before we ever see a client. And it'll never be perfect because ultimately we have no idea what that client's willing to pay. And so we're value pricing and value pricing is judgment. We just have to use our judgment. As long as when you test the model, the numbers are coming out above the bare minimum, the baseline. And that's why you can put, as I showed you, you can put a minimum price in. That just gives you the reassurance it will never go below that number. And so you just got to go with it. And then, sometimes the clients will buy, sometimes they don't. And as you learn things, you'll just reflect and change the model and make it better and better over time. Okay, I think that's the last question. Nancy then said, so maybe we can tweak a bit of an aggravation fee in there for some. Absolutely, that was the global adjuster. Yeah, if you've got pitter clients or something, they aggravate you, then you absolutely could, on your models, override the calculations with that global adjuster. Okay, so just before we wrap up, let me just tell you about next week's various sessions, just so you know. If you're in my online live academy, that's Tuesday. Yesterday I told you it's Wednesday. It's Tuesday. What am I doing? Thursday. Okay, Thursday's a session anybody can come to. Thursday, I am running a 60-minute session on how you can start to build in recurring revenues into your accounting firm. So look out for an email coming your way about Thursday. I'll also post details in the Facebook group and the Facebook page as well. And then next week on Friday is the next of these sessions. Next week, I think the theme for next Friday is likely to be 3 tips for creating beautiful proposals. Somebody said they want to look at the proposal side of the software. So next week will be 3 tips for looking at making your proposals look fantastic. It'll be probably 20, 30 minutes of content and then about 30, 40 minutes of questions as well. And so finally, I'm going to leave with a bit of music. And oh yeah, one other thing, if you found this valuable, please do just let me know. If you could just give, whether you're in Facebook or whether you're in YouTube, just click that thumbs up if it's been valuable today. And if you're not subscribed yet, then please do that. And then also, as it will say as the closing music rolls, if there's anything you want me to teach you specifically, or any questions I've missed, stick them in the comments box. I always read the comments after these sessions. Have an awesome weekend. I will see you all soon. Goodbye for now.
I wasted all my time, I wasted all my nights, I wasted it on someone who's indifferent.